Since 2017, the Italian Wine Podcast has exploded and expects to hit 6 million listens by the end of July 2023. We're celebrating this success by recognizing those who have shared the journey with us and giving them the opportunity to contribute to the ongoing success of the shows. By buying a paper copy of the Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0 or making a donation to help the ongoing running costs, members of the international Italian wine community will be given the chance to nominate future guests and even enter a prize draw to have lunch with Stevie Kim and Professor Attilio Scienza. To find out more, visit us at italianwinepodcast.com. Chin chin!
Welcome to Masterclass US Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the US market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests at the end of each episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us each week to learn more about the US market. Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Jeremy Hart to the Italian Wine Podcast. Jeremy has decades of previous experience in hospitality and wholesale, and in 2020, he co-founded Inknowlogy Marketing Agency and created his own wine brand, Explicit Content. In 2021, he co-founded another business called Somm.ai and holds the role of the Chief Strategic Marketing Officer. Jeremy's dedicated to pushing the beverage industry's growth and promotion through data-enhanced methods, and we're really excited to learn from him today on today's episode about all that he's doing with Somm.ai and Inknowlogy. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's so great to have you here.
Very nice to be here.
So before we dive into today's discussion about sales data, fascinating topic, can you tell us a little bit more about how you got into the wine industry?
I got into the wine industry in 2005. I was in bar and restaurant prior to that, but it was the first time I was working at a place that was exclusively wine. And so it was a little retail restaurant that was in Houston that was just super far ahead of its time. And I was super fortunate to work there. We used to do 50 wines by the glass in 2005, 16 flights that we changed every week. And then we did just an insane amount of retail sales monthly in a little 5,000 square foot space. And so teeth on a really cool place.
Amazing. So that was 2005. Let's fast forward to 2020 and 21 when you started these new companies. Tell us a little bit about that.
So we launched Inknowlogy essentially as a marketing agency. And so the original plan was essentially to in a creative way, teach people how to self-import if they're in product. And so that was kind of the background to that. And then got into a little bit of brokerage. I still do some of that as well. But for the most part, it was just coaching, wineries on essentially how to do it on their own. Mm-hmm. And so I saw that was definitely a need. And as much time as I spent on the import side, I did that for 7.5 years. I definitely noticed that it didn't really matter how often anyone would come to the U.S. For the most part. To do business, there was still always a gap on education on how things function.
Right.
And it's incredibly difficult because each state has their own set of laws and operations and kind of standards of practice. And so it is a minefield. And so it was a definite need.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we're doing this series on the Italian Wine Podcast, all about the U.S. wine market, is to help demystify and break down working the U.S. market for our listeners. So we share that common belief in the need for education and providing more insights and information to people in order to really master and learn how to make the most of this market.
Exactly.
In this episode, Jeremy, we're going to talk to you about how wineries and wine companies can better use sales data specifically to inform their sales and marketing decisions in the U.S. market. So our 3 key takeaways for today's masterclass, and we're really excited to learn from you, are number 1, what are the biggest challenges Italian wineries are facing today, specifically in the on-premise, and also on the flip side, what are the opportunities? Number 2, industry benchmarking. How can brands accurately compare themselves to their competitors using sales data? And number 3, when and how do you know as a brand when to push on your distributor for performance? So I think we're going to learn so much from you today. So let's dive in. So to start with, talk to us a little bit about the state of the on-premise market in the U.S. for Italian wine. What categories are performing best? What states are we seeing the most growth? Where are we maybe seeing some declines in the Italian wine category? Just give us a broad picture overview of where we are in 2023 for Italian wine in the U.S. market.
Well, the really interesting piece of information within the data, we cover currently right now across the U.S. about 45,000 on-premise accounts. And so we go across all those wine lists, we understand what's on all those wine lists, and then anything that we see on those wine lists, we can break down via country, region, sub-region, appellation, and predominant grape varietal. And so between those things, you get a really good blueprint of what's happening at any given moment. We also track changes, so things that come on, come off. So right now in the U.S., the last year to date, uh, basically for net ads right now, for U.S. wines in the U.S., it's almost flat. It's 0.3% as far as growth. As far as for European products, France is in the lead, but significantly driven by Champagne,
Mm-hmm.
a little bit of Bordeaux, and a little bit of Burgundy. The really fun stuff is with Italy. It's number 2 as far as growth. Net ad, it's up 1,200 placements, which is fantastic. And so as far as net ads, the leading area for this is actually going to be Barolo, which is pretty exciting. It's always like right now, the really interesting thing is that with all the talk of recession, decline, the major growth categories for all the major wine countries, US, France, Italy, are on the premium side. And so for Italy, you're looking at Barolo, you're looking at Super Tuscans, you're looking at Brunello, and then at the same point in time, Chianti. And so those are always kind of some of the drivers. But as far as their price points, you typically don't see that much growth within this time frame. So it's kind of interesting information. And even Barbaresco, it's basically number 4, and it's a very small place. And so those kinds of things are interesting and something you can really easily kind of identify.
Yeah, that's interesting that, that follows what we've been seeing in the industry headlines about the super premium luxury categories growing, but it's so interesting that that is the trend considering all the negative headlines we're seeing about the economy and rising prices. So I guess consumers though, they're still spending as if we're not in a recession, which is interesting just to think about the consumer behavior there. I don't think it's specific to wine either. You look at fashion and beauty. I mean, the cost of everything is going up, and people seem to be keeping up with the spending somehow. So maybe a lot of credit card debt out there.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to assume as well. Yeah.
But regardless, it's good for Italy to see some of those categories performing well, and that's exciting. Even Barbaresco, to hear that that's on the rise as well. So that's really exciting. What about the highest performing Italian SKU on premise? Can you tell us that?
Well, one of the other things I wanted to mention really quick, which I was looking into this morning, that's really, really quite exciting, is that if you break this down and look at it by state, there's one state that is absolutely off the charts as far as growth, and it's Colorado.
Oh, interesting.
Colorado is up 19%.
For Italy specifically, correct?
Italy specifically.
Wow, interesting. I know Bobby Stuckey's out there with Frasca and his restaurants, and he's big in Italian wine. But maybe people are following his leadership and his path. That's very interesting. I would not have guessed Colorado. I would have thought maybe Florida, since that state's grown so much in the last few years. But Colorado, very cool.
Yeah, really, really kind of unusual. Let's see here, as far as for the question you just asked. Oh, and the other interesting thing here with all of this, as far as, it's a lot of the same states that you would kind of imagine: New York, California, New Jersey. Illinois is always right there. Massachusetts is like one of those sleeper states. So much Italian business gets done in Massachusetts. It's wild.
Interesting.
And then DC is always a major player, and then Pennsylvania as well. But let's see here. As far as some of the highest performing SKUs or producers, yeah, this is going to blow your mind. So one of the top performing, it's basically tied. And so for on-premise growth, it's just so crazy. La Marca is number 1 for net ads for Prosecco, just in general. These are all SKUs for Italy, right? The last year. They're up 152 for net ads.
Wow.
Okay. Guess what's number 2? You're never going to guess. It's going to be Ornellaia.
Wow.
Has 151 net ads. That's wild.
That is wild.
The average price difference between these two, La Marca on a wine list sits at $48 on average. One Elias, it's at 451.
Wow, that's fascinating. So, and they're not too dissimilar too in terms of their net ads, right? Like they seem, yeah. So that is really really fascinating. I mean, we know Prosecco has had such a boom, so La Marca isn't. That's not entirely surprising. I was figuring it was going to be a very commercial brand in number one, but to hear that Ornellaia is number two, I mean, that is really really interesting and speaks to what you said earlier about the growth in the luxury space too, right? So that speaks directly to that. Can you see in the data which states Ornellaia has seen the most growth recently?
So as far as by state, the ones that have grown the most, California,
Okay.
DC is number two, and then Massachusetts,
Okay.
right from that one, Illinois and New Jersey.
Interesting.
But the heavy lifting significantly is in California.
Hmm.
They're plus 50.
Plus 15 in California. Wow. Okay. I'll have to be on the lookout out here in California for Ornellaia on more lists. That's great. Very interesting. Well, it's fun to dig into the data for sure. And I think this is a good example of, Jeremy, what you're bringing to wineries in terms of the data that you can offer. I mean, that's really interesting. So, let's also talk about benchmarking. It's important to look at our competitors, within our category, outside of our category. You mentioned France is in that number one position ahead of Italy, but there's also Spain, Portugal, not to mention, domestic wines here in the US market that are huge. I'm sitting here near Napa, and it's very California centric out here in terms of what people are drinking. So how should Italian wineries be looking at data in order to benchmark their performance on premise to other brands, other regions, competitors? Talk to us a little bit about benchmarking.
Italian Wine Podcast, part of the Mama Jumbo Shrimp family.
I think the big piece and with today, the interesting piece is that the premium is such a benchmarkable category just by price point. If you just want to look at reds, over $300 on a wine list or something like that, you get some really interesting data, right? And so that's one way to look at it. If you just want to drill into by appellation, I think that is also super duper important. The funny thing in the past is that all of this business has existed, and the way to go about doing business has existed is that you're basically going off of feeling or kind of like looking around and, am I seeing other people on wine lists? Am I seeing more shelf space? But there was never really any true kind of tangible for on premise. And so you didn't know if you were just having a flat year. You didn't know if a bad vintage was offsetting everyone else as much as it was you, or a short vintage or whatever else. And so those kind of things are super duper interesting to drill into. And you can do that within the platform. So like any particular place you want me to dig into, on the premium side, it's super duper easy to see. And that's also one of the really interesting pieces here is that having that pricing component that you're able to see on a platform is that you can also see sometimes growth. You can understand that maybe someone's having significant growth because they're a little bit cheaper or the things, but to be able to look at it macroly and understand that like that doesn't always matter. Like, sometimes not at all. So like for Barolo, for example, I'm looking at Scavino. They're the number one producer as far as net ads. The last year, they're up 194 total placements the last year, right? So it's 11% growth. Okay, their average price point's 196. Okay, below that one's Vira. Their average price point's 125 across all their SKUs. They're up 141. Okay. The really interesting thing, though, is if you keep digging into some of this stuff, some of these that are significantly expensive are still having wild growth. Like a Giacomo Caterno is average price points basically $727 on a wine list. They're up 50 net ads. They're number seventh as far as total growth. And so, I think the barrier to entry to where everyone always thought you had to discount those kinds of things, I don't really think that's a problem. That's something that I always considered to kind of be a problem with selling Italian wine. I did for 7.5 years, almost exclusively Italian wine across 6 states, and then also into national accounts. And so, one of the pushbacks I got often was this wine's too inexpensive.
Interesting.
And so now I think it's finally caught up to where People want the premium, and if you want to compete with, some major players from California, if you want to be on the best wine list for awards, those kinds of things, some of those things, if it can't go by the glass, there's only so many by the glass slots. Some of these prices need to be raised, or you're also seeing producers doing kind of premium packages now on wines that you typically wouldn't see, like I don't want to say a reserve Vermentino, but especially made Vermentino that sits on the lees and extended time of ripening, or those kinds of things to make a premium package out of a wine that you didn't always typically see. And so I think now is the time to really kind of push all those things, because I think they're going to be able to find homes a lot easier. And there's this weird thing right now to where like the cool James Beard kind of driven restaurants, hipster restaurants have this affinity to Italian wine that I love. Like you can find Italian wine more now than I think you ever could.
And are you seeing within those, can you categorize in your data those hipster quote unquote restaurants and see what categories of Italian wine are performing better? And
we can. And so like one of the neat things is you can sort by awards. So like if I just want to go look at like all the Michelin star restaurants or all the Grand Award restaurants or all the James Beard restaurants, whatever, or a combination of those, like if I just want to put on the filter for Italian and James Beard restaurants and then just kind of see. So for James Beard winning restaurants, they're number 2 as far as net ads. France has more.
Okay.
Right. And so France basically has 500 net ads last year in James Beard award-winning restaurants. Okay. But that percentage of change is only 2.6%. Okay. So their growth, even though it's almost 500 net ads, is 2.6%. For Italian wines in those restaurants, it's 353 net ads, but the percentage of growth is 7.3. So it's substantially higher as far as as far as trends. And so, that's exciting to me.
Yeah, that's very exciting. How would you look at benchmarking or comparing? We see France as the competitor for Italy. So how would you let's take Ornellaia, seen substantial growth in the last year. If Ornellaia wanted to look at target accounts against their French competitors, how would you look at that, like outside of the Italian category?
So there's a couple different ways to do it. So like if I wanted to pull up Ornellaia, so I'm going to pull up Ornellaia, just the Ornellaia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pull up that one. So essentially is what we'll have this tagged as is going to be a red Bordeaux blend from Tuscany. Right.
Okay.
And then its average price point, this is quite the range, but it is its average price point. We have it on 914 restaurants. Within our 45,000, they buy Ornellaia, right? Their average price point or median price point is 450, but their range is 350 to 625. Okay. If I want to do a comp just against that, I'm going to go ahead and do that. The only thing I'm going to take out from here, instead of having Tuscany in here, I'm just going to leave it open. I'm going to go to France and Italy. So we're still looking at red Bordeaux blends.
Okay.
Right. Now let's just see where everything kind of sits within all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to look at this by producer, I'm going to look at it by SKU real quick instead of by producer. I think it's going to give a little bit more accurate picture. So the price range is 350 to 625. Okay. Essentially, the amount of accounts that buy red Bordeaux blend from either France or Italy, so basically Super Tuscans or Bordeaux for the most part, because of the price point. Within our 45,000 on-premise accounts, which is we skew towards the high end for accounts, right? And so basically there's 2,157 accounts that I can show you to target. Okay. That's basically the account pool of it. The total amount of placements is 12,000 because some of these carry multiple vintages. They can carry multiple kind of SKUs that fit within this category, so on and so forth, right? So basically every account carries about 6, right? Accounts that would carry this. And the average price point between all that's 425. The way that this ranks as far as by total placements, the funniest thing, number 1 is Sassicaia. Okay. And this is between Super Tuscans and Bordeaux. Number 2 is Ornellaia, right? So Sassicaia has 965 placements. Okay. Ornellaia has 878. Okay. The next one below that one is Claude Esternel. So you're looking at, it's a huge jump down. We're looking at 572. So we're less than 300 placements between that just to get to Bordeaux. That's the power of Super Tuscan, especially premium Super Tuscans.
Right. And what that tells me too is that the power of the Super Tuscan brand name of Ornellaia and Sassicaia is stronger than some of the brand names perhaps in Bordeaux. I mean, that's what I'm gathering from what you're saying is, yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I 100% agree. And so the really funny thing on here is Sasakaya, even being the leader here, they're actually down. They're actually down 4%.
Huh, interesting.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
And so besides that, it's just basically Bordeaux for a bit after that. But it's to me, it's transcended that category. You know what I mean? It's at the same. It's premium. It's the same ideal kind of customer avatar, whatever you want to call it. Like it's really really funny. You know that now we're here. The next Tuscan after that, just FYI, just for knowledge, is actually going to be basically Karmaconda from Gaia. Yeah. And that's a little bit further down. So at the same point in time, it's in the top 20.
Very interesting. I mean, there's so much data at your fingertips, Jeremy, that you're pulling up, right? And we know that with supplier and importer distributor relationships, a lot of it is working in partnership and in tandem to be successful in the market. So how, and you've been on both sides of this now, how and when do you think brands should be pushing their distributor for performance? Like, how can they use some of the data insights that you're pulling to go to their distributor and look at either changing strategy, improving strategy, etc.?
I think that benchmarking piece obviously is going to be the key to all of those things. Because in the past, like we as mentioned prior, it was basically based off of feeling. You know what I mean? Like you could kind of understand what other people were doing. You look around, oh, are they hiring more people? Those kinds of things. But besides that, there wasn't a lot of tangibles. Some of the major kind of wholesalers, because they were essentially kind of the leaders for these kind of categories or these kinds of progressions of the business, is essentially that they could say for this, category, there's 15 wines within here, you know what I mean, that exist within the account pool for this state. And then this is the share, but there's no names to the wineries typically. Part, and then you can't really understand. And the other thing is too, even if you're surveying that for yourself, the big huge disadvantage is that you're only looking at information provided by the person that sells your same wine. And so you're asking for them to go increase your business, you're literally asking them to go trade horses, basically take business away from someone else to plug you in. With what we do, we provide a more accurate, clear picture of the entire state of what's going on, and it's outside. So like one of the neat things with the platform is that you can actually go in here and then chop it up even by wholesaler as best as we can tag it to wholesaler. And so you can really, if it's time to push and you can see it within the information, you can see whether everyone's being flat, whether the market's soft, or if it's on the rise, you can see, how your wholesaler is doing with that. And then also you can give them a list of targets for their competing wholesaler. So when you do nudge with this kind of information, in the past you would ask for a target list. You would ask for these things. Now you can literally provide the target list. And now it's more encouraging than being like, hey, you're doing a terrible job. Now the push is like, hey, this is where your competitors are at. Don't replace someone else's wine that you represent as well. You can now take another guy's placement.
Right. You're giving them information that allows them to go out into the market more strategically.
Right.
As opposed to based off of feeling, but based off of real numbers.
Like tangibles.
Yeah. Tangibles. Yeah.
And so now it's a different conversation entirely. You know what I mean? You're helping pull the rope, and then at the same point in time, you're showing them where to fish, all those things. And so another piece to the platform that's kind of interesting as far as like nudging distributors or wholesalers is that with the platform, you can see within our X category, like if I want to go look up, Barolo, or it doesn't really matter. Here, I'll just pop open one real quick. But if I want to go look up Barolo and see all of my competitors, I can literally go in here and look at notifications. And then within that, I can see who's raised their prices. Right. So if there's ever pushback from a wholesaler on like, hey, we can't stomach this, you're going to lose all these placements. You can literally go in here with tangibles and be like, everyone's doing it.
Right.
We're not the only ones. And so now it's like, it changes the conversation entirely. It makes all those conversations a lot easier.
Yeah. Because you're going in there not just off of feeling or emotion, but like you said, we're going in with tangibles. Yeah, that's super powerful. So Jeremy, we're coming to the close of today's episode, and before we finish, we always do our rapid fire quiz. We will ask you 3 questions, and we'll ask you to respond in a couple of sentences or less in order to really hammer home some of the key takeaways of today's episode. And we learned so much from you. So this might be hard to answer in one or two questions each of these, but we'll do your best here. So question number one, what are the biggest challenges Italian wineries are facing today in the on-premise?
I would have said in the past education, but that's no longer applicable. I think that as far as some of the biggest hurdles for Italian producers, probably FaceTime. FaceTime, in the past, it used to be that you used to fight for FaceTime with your sales reps. I think the best use of time, if you're in the U.S. market, is spend as much time with buyers as possible. In this age, especially where not everyone's staying at the same position, and that rep might not cover what you need them to cover in the future because now they're trying to restart a relationship. The really cool thing is if you make relationships with buyers and they leave a place, sometimes they leave your placements there and no one touches it.
Yeah,
And
that's a great point.
Propagates it from there. And so that one relationship can benefit so much, or they fall into a restaurant group position. And now your relationship just went times 5 because now you're across a bunch of restaurants. And so that would be the biggest hurdle would be getting the FaceTime, but as much as you spend it with buyers.
Question number 2, industry benchmarking. How can brands more accurately compare themselves to their competitors?
There's ways within our platform to where, and I would suggest using our platform, obviously, but there's ways for the first time you can have tangibles. Yeah, before thoughts were in more kind of generalizations. How's Tuscany doing? How's Piedmont doing? Those kinds of things to where you can actually drill down and get finite. That's where there's a lot of riches there.
Okay, and finally, Jeremy, question number 3. When and how does a supplier know when to push on their distributor for performance?
Being flat used to be a pretty clear indication of a distributor's point of view on whether they're going to push your product or not. There's now tangibles that exist to prove whether a flat year was actually a great year. And so that's an important piece to it. The one time I would absolutely know it's time to push a wholesaler is if my products are falling behind within their hierarchy of things that need to get done. And I'm not talking about generally, they're always going to have some brands that are more important, but if my lateral brand within their book is being represented better than mine, or my placements are getting replaced with those wines, then that's time to definitely go push a wholesaler.
Okay. I think that's really valuable advice. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today on Masterclass US Wine Market on the Italian Wine Podcast. We really appreciate you being here. How can our listeners connect with you and follow what you're doing with Somm.ai?
Yeah, please be sure to follow me on LinkedIn, and then also my information to contact me will be posted with this.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Jeremy. It was so great to have you here today.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much. Anytime.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.